Mike McGarry wrote at the Press of Atlantic City as he ponders, can Joel Embiid? He knows he needs to get better, but can he? I mean, we see what he did on Monday night, Mike. Does he look like a guy that's maybe hit that wall, the proverbial, hey, I gave it all I got, but this is all I am now?
I don't think so. And one reason I don't think so is he did grab 21 rebounds the other night. So while he went 0 for 12 from the floor in the second half, 21 rebounds is no small feat. So I think, obviously the knee was bothering him, but he was still healthy enough to grab 21 rebounds, and that would give me some hope for Game 5 and the rest of the series.
All right, so how important is it for the Sixers? I like it. I asked you this, Mike. They had the game against Washington where he left in the middle of the game or early in that game, and they just looked discombobulated. And then when they played without him the next time, they looked fine. Do they now prepare for not having him as a big part of the offense tonight, knowing that he's maybe limited?
They might, but I think they need him. I mean, this is, the Hawks are a step up in class from the Wizards. I think if Joel Embiid is not on the court and making an impact, this series might be tough for the Sixers the rest of the way. So they can prepare all they want, but they're going to need Joel Embiid out there to play a big role in games 5, 6, and possibly game 7.
There's no doubt that that's a key. They need to have him out there. But next up on the list for you, Mike, what also has to be different tonight than was in game 4?
Well, I mean, I hate to come back to the thing that we seem to talk to after every playoff game, but Ben Simmons has to be aggressive offensively, the way he was early in the third quarter of game 3. I'm not asking for elbow jumpers. I'm not asking for three-point shots. But what I am asking is for you to take the ball aggressively to the rim when you have opportunities and look to score. He can't shoot just one shot in the second half of the game, especially if Joel Embiid is struggling and comes out tonight and doesn't look as good as he did early in the series. So, I mean, we need the Ben Simmons of the third quarter of game 3. And I don't know why we don't get that Ben Simmons on a more consistent basis.
I think that might go down. If he is this guy for the rest of his career, and there's no reason to think that this isn't who he is, that will be the biggest question ever at the end of the day. It's why was this all that he ever wanted to be? Don't you think? Like, if he has can Oprah sit down with him and say, why was this all you ever wanted to be?
I mean, and you go back to the beginning of the playoffs, right? And I looked at the Toronto series from 2 years ago, and we saw he played 51 minutes in the fourth quarter of that series and took 6 shots. Again, I'm not thinking about, three-pointers, elbow jumpers. What I am talking about is being aggressive around the rim, getting to the rim. In game 3, I knew a few people that had a rooting interest in seeing Ben Simmons score more than 13 and a half points. And in the first half, I was getting texts like, is this guy trying not to score? Because he was literally at the rim and throwing the ball back out to the perimeter. And this is the complaint about Simmons, right? We know he's he can be a good player on a winning team. He does stuff that helps you win games. However, what people want from him is when Embiid is struggling and going 0 for 12 tonight, when Embiid is, who knows what he'll be like, people want Simmons to come out and sort of put his offensive will on the game.
Yeah, I agree. Look, hey, I've been a guy who defends Simmons. The first half I thought he played well. The second half, I thought that Trae Young really took the momentum and the pace and the style. He changed the way that the game kind of stylistically went and really took that from. That's what Simmons does really well. He controls the pace and the style of the game, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for that because you don't score points with that. But Young took that away from him, and I don't think Simmons ever really got it back at any point in that game.
Yeah, well, I think Atlanta, at some point, it became more of a half-court game, and that's where Simmons, except for the first 6 or 7 minutes of Game 3 in the third quarter, kind of struggles. And it's, as we go back to its inability to, want to be aggressive offensively. The foul shooting is an issue. You saw it last night to a degree with with Giannis.
Yep.
I mean, Giannis is a more, at 34 points last night, is obviously a better offensive player than Simmons, but a lot of the things that sort of hampered Simmons hampered Giannis in the Milwaukee Bucks last night.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, and that's why I say, like, I think Ben Simmons could be Giannis. He could score 30 if he wanted to. Just puts his shoulder down, gets to the basket. But I think in the end, you see that the limitations of Giannis scoring 30 still isn't good enough. Like, you can't win with a guy who's that limited. You have to have the other pieces. Milwaukee does not. Philadelphia, you think, does.
Well, with Embiid, yes, because to me it comes down to, again, playoff basketball, and really basketball at any level comes down to, in the fourth quarter of a close game, who are we throwing the ball to, and is that guy able to create shots for himself and teammates? Giannis is not able to do it in the last 3 minutes of the game. Simmons really isn't able to do it. That doesn't mean, they're not great players. I mean, Shaq couldn't do it. That's why he had Kobe do it for him, or Dwayne Wade do it for him. The Milwaukee Bucks are trying to do it with Chris Middleton. The Nets did it last night with Kevin Durant. I'd rather do it with Kevin Durant than Chris Middleton.
Yeah, I agree. Like, hey, that's the problem, though. You heard, if you were watching that game last night, you heard them mention during the game that, hey, late in the game, they typically have to go through Middleton for their big moments because Giannis can't. I mean, Mike, Blake Griffin was playing him on the low block and saying, do what you need to, man. And Giannis just says, all right, let me shift it into another gear, and he just tries to barrel right through you. I mean, that's all he's got offensively. Now, he did make 2 of 4 from three-point range last night, so he is willing to try. But the other team's saying, go ahead, and he knows his limitations from there. So it's I almost feel bad for Giannis because I said earlier, Mike, Ben Simmons is like the Bobby Abreu of the NBA. He does things like it's such an effortless look that it frustrates people as to why. And then meanwhile, you see Giannis out there just lowering his shoulder and trying as hard as he can to score 2 points. It's like, man, I feel bad for him sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, again, it's when you get in these discussions, you feel bad because you feel like you're dumping on Giannis. You're dumping on a guy who had 34 points last night and is a 2-time MVP of the league. But, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and that's one of his weaknesses. I think the thing with Simmons is the other night is people are just wondering, why can't we get the Simmons who played the first 6-7 minutes of the third quarter of game 3? Why can't we get that guy on a more consistent basis? And especially if Embiid is hobbled tonight, I think you need that guy. Now, I think the Sixers are going to come out fired up tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if Simmons had a great first quarter, if they were able to push the pace and get out to a big lead. But, it's funny. The other night in the second quarter, the Sixers are up 18. I'm saying to myself, wow, the Nets and the Bucks are in a series here that's going to go 7 games. I'm not scared of Utah and Phoenix, or the Clippers. I'm thinking to myself, wow, the Sixers could win an NBA title. And then at the end of the game, I'm like, the Sixers now are in a life and death struggle with the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy how this thing, I mean, you watch that game, I'm sure you're watching Brooklyn last night, and you're like, they're down, and you're like, man, and then all of a sudden, Harden didn't do a thing, and he's on the court for 40-plus minutes, and they somehow, like we talk about, well, the Sixers are playing 4-on-5. The Nets were playing 3-on-5 last night and still beat the Bucks. So, I don't know. There was a part of me that said, man, it called me crazy, but I almost rather play the Nets, and part of it was because Giannis really takes away what Simmons does effectively, like seeing over defense, being able to kind of get that matchup with the smaller guy. But they didn't even use Giannis on Durant last night. So now that whole series, I don't know that the Bucks come back and win that thing.
You know what? I kind of take a different view there. I think the Bucks come back and win Game 6, and we're in a Game 7 in Brooklyn Saturday night. Because if I'm the Bucks, I look at this. I'm going home where I've already won 2 games, right? And last night we should have won the game. And it took an all-time playoff game from Kevin Durant, one of the greatest games I've ever seen, to beat us. If what do you have, 49? If he scores 45, they lose. The Nets lose. So if I'm Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee wins Game 6, and then we're back in Game 7 in Brooklyn. Well, I think Brooklyn wins Game 7, but I wouldn't count the Bucks out right now.
A lot of talk about, hey, do they rest Harden? Do they even rest Durant and just put all their chips into a Game 7?
I think you got to go, I think you got to think about whether or not you can play Harden. I mean, 44 minutes on that hamstring is really remarkable. I think a lot of it takes, You got to take into account where is Kyrie Irving health-wise. I think you go out there to try and win game 6, but let's say you're down 12 early in the third quarter or you fall behind double digits, then I think you pull the plug and say, let's rest some guys and gear up for a game 7. Because, Durant played all 48 minutes last night. What's he going to go, 48, 48, and 48?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, guess what? If he does, that's a bad look for the other guys around who aren't giving you more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I thought Durant last night really reminded us, he really hasn't been on the national stage like in 2 years. We forget that in 2018, 2019, he might have been or probably was the best player in the world. And, the other thing you forget is he's 7'1". He's as tall as Embiid. And look how skilled he is with the ball and his shot.
Crazy.
Really just a remarkable performance last night.
Hey, one thing on the Sixers real fast and the Hawks. In game 1, they shot the lights out. They hit 23s. They have not shot the ball well since that game and pulled out a win while not shooting. If you're the Sixers, are you a little concerned that they still have one more game of bombs away in them?
Well, absolutely. The series is 2-2 now. That's the sort of situation you put yourself in by blowing game 4. Now all of a sudden the Hawks can come out. They've already done it in one game. Who says they can't come out tonight and sink 20-something 3-pointers?
I think they have another game left in them where they shoot way over their average. I mean, in 3-pointers, they can't keep missing wide open looks.
Right. Doc Rivers said it best after the game. He said they blew a golden opportunity, and they did. These teams have played 16 quarters now, right? 4 games. What have the Sixers been? The best team in 13 of those 16 quarters, probably? It's really the first quarter of game 1 and the second half of game 4 where you can say the Hawks actually got the better of the Sixers. So the Sixers have outplayed them in 13 of 16 quarters, yet here we are 2-2, and now you've opened yourself up to. Who says Trae Young can't come in and get hot? Who says Bogdanovich can't get hot? Who says the Hawks can all of a sudden, force a 7th game, and then who knows what's going to happen in there. You put yourself in a position where you're letting a lot of variables come into place where you could have put it, you could have been closing out the series tonight and gotten yourself 5 or 6 days of rest, again, getting ready to face an exhausted and banged up Brooklyn team or a Milwaukee team that had just been to a 7-game series.
Doesn't happen much, but we agree. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Mike, what's happening locally? A couple baseball games today.
Yeah, absolutely. About to head out as soon as we finish up here. We've got the Holy Spirit playing for the state non-public B title against Morristown Beard at 4 o'clock. And then followed up by St. Augustine at 7 o'clock for the non-public A title against St. Joe Montville. And we still have the St. Joe softball team will play for a state title on Friday. And then on Saturday night, Ocean City goes for the state Group 3 baseball title. So a great baseball season. There's only 6 state title games in New Jersey high school baseball, and we got Cape Atlantic League teams in 3 of them. So 50% ain't bad, Mike.
That's pretty good. And obviously, Mike will be covering them if you want updates at AC Press McGarry. So will you be in Philly tonight, or will you be watching baseball?
I will be watching baseball, but following the Sixers from afar, and then I'll be should be back at the house for the post-game Zoom press conferences.
All right, there he goes. Mike will be back on Friday, and follow him at AC Press McGarry for all the scores for Holy Spirit, St. Augustine, and all the high school updates. All right, Mike, thanks, man.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thanks.
All right, he'll be back on Friday as we will mix it back up here with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.